Hello, Premier Group Insurance agents. Today we're going to go over how to create a master certificate of liability. Now, this is pretty straightforward, relatively easy, so long as you have all the elements that you need. Number one, you need to make sure you have an account in EasyLinks for the customer. Number two, you need to make sure you have the policy line entered into EasyLinks, whether that is downloaded by the carrier or you manually add this to EasyLinks. Now, if you have to manually add the policy line to EasyLinks, you're going to want to make sure that you add the policy details. Otherwise, nothing's going to pull over and you'll have to do more manual entry. I'm not going to show you how to do this in this video. There are other videos you can reference for this. But note, if there's nothing showing in the general liability details, it's not going to map over to your certificate of liability. So as long as you have those things in place, you should be ready to go. I also like to have a copy of the policy on reference as well, in case there's some things that I don't know and may not map over automatically either. Just a good rule of thumb. That way you can double check yourself if need be. So there are a couple ways you can go about doing this. The easiest way to create the certificates of any kind is through the certificates tab. EasyLinks has done a really great job updating this and making it very user-friendly. Okay, so you'll notice that when I popped into here, certificates have been created previously. So if you ever have had certificates created for an account, you'll see them under these different tabs. This is very important to pay attention to because they will move depending on the time that the period that the policy is in. So, for example, if there is no coverage in effect as of today on that certificate, they're going to show under this expired tab. If there's coverage 100% current, nothing is pending or going to be expired soon, they'll show up in this current tab. If no coverage is effect yet, so today is the 15th of February, and it doesn't take effect until the 20th, it's going to show up in this pending tab section. Definitely keep that in mind. When you create a master certificate, you should only have one master for each type of certificate that you are creating. So only one certificate of liability should be needed unless you change policies in the middle of or you change carriers in the middle of a policy term, or you have a significant change in coverages, either a reduction or an increase. That's the only time that you should have a different master certificate. So what we're going to do here is add the master. And then we have this menu bar that we're just going to follow to get everything set up correctly. The Accord form, we're going to select. You can see all the options we have, and I have videos on most of these. But the certificate of the Accord 25 is the most common one you'll run into. Any liability coverage that you have in this account, a policy for, should show up underneath here. So the commercial package policy of the general liability, the workers' compensation, the umbrella, EPLI, or any other liability, that's the third-party coverage, should be allowed to be added to the certificate. If for some reason it doesn't show up, there might be a bug in the system, or it may have been entered wrong. So just keep in mind. Another thing to point out here is that if your policy is not in effect as of today, so say, this policy was renewing on the 20th of February and that hasn't taken effect, you can click this downward caret and there would be a pending policy line that you can select so that you can create a certificate that's been or a policy line that will be in effect in the future. But if you're sending out a certificate for the future, definitely make sure that payment has been made and that you have authorization from the carrier to issue a certificate early. All right, so we're going to go ahead and select this. And then if you had any other policies, make sure you select those, save and continue. Now, this section, so this is our master. So keep in mind, this is going to be the same form we use for every certificate holder. So I do not recommend entering any blanket information on the master certificate because that's going to show up for every single holder. And you do not want to give away the coverage if it's not asked for. So unless, yeah, there are very few situations where I would do this because not every holder is going to want that. And you cannot provide a additional insured or waiver of subrogation to a generic holder or anything of that nature. So just I would avoid this section and not utilize it at all. The next section here does allow for you to add other documents for the certificate. This is the idea is that some holders request to have a copy of certain endorsements. Again, I would not use this feature at all because not every certificate holder will likely need it. I would add that at the holder level, which I'll show you how to do in another video. All right, so moving right along. Now this is where you would add holders if you had to do mass holder imports. And I do go over this feature in another video as well. But you can also pull over holders from prior certificates. This is one of the biggest reasons why it's not a good idea to have multiples, because it just creates more work for you in the long run. So if I wanted to pull over prior holders from other certificate years, then I would just click in here and select the ones that I needed to, and I could upload those, but we don't have any of those at this point in time. And then you can also mass import certificate holders. If you have a spreadsheet, there's actually a template that you can download, and it'll make sure that it's in the right format so you can easily update or create all of those at once. I know some accounts have 50 or 100 certificate holders, so that is definitely much easier. I'm not going to go into this right here, but you can also add a holder here if it's just one or two that you haven't issued previously. All right, so we're going to hit save and close or continue. This is probably the most important section of the process because we want to make sure that we have everything updated, that everything maps properly, and that what you're going to be using for every single certificate is correct. I always start at the top and work my way down. You have your producer, so that's your agency, your named insured. Make sure that this is not the account nickname. I know a lot of people who get requests to get corrections because the named insured is not proper. So you need to make sure that what the policy reflects is the named insured that's on here. And that should match the FEIN, all of that good stuff. The contact that you want them to reach out to, should they have any issues. And then this part right here is actually very important as well. This is the writing insurance company that's going to reflect down here later in the certificate. If you don't enter the writing company into the policy that you enter in EasyLinks, this is not going to populate. And this is also a reason that a lot of requestors come back and say, hey, I need to have the NAICS code. I need to know who the writing company is, because this is a really important financial strength indication for these companies. So just keep that in mind. You'll see down here that the liability corresponds with A because that's the carrier it matches to. You can see I have these check boxes that automatically filled in, the policy number, and the effective dates. The coverage is filled in. If you needed to enter in like liquor liability, because I know sometimes those don't pull over automatically for whatever reason. Every management system I've ever used has done that, but you can add that here and, notate that properly here if it is included in that policy line. Then the auto, we didn't select those policy lines, so those aren't filled in. Another thing that's missed often is the yes or no are partners, executives, or officers excluded, yes or no. Make sure you answer that. That's a big deal. And then per statute or other, these will never populate automatically. I have no idea why. Might be we don't know where it maps from in the EasyLink system. So just make sure you always have at least per statute selected. And then the last thing down here is the signature. So just make sure that it's big enough to be able to read is my opinion. And then if your signature doesn't automatically populate, that button up at the top middle-ish right, you can either select from the drop-down box or you can type in the signature and it'll populate. And then we want to make sure we save. And then the distribute part here, if you entered an email address, this is the only time it would automatically send something once you distribute. But basically, distribute actually means to create or generate the actual document. So if you don't select distribute, then it's not going to create any forms for you. So you won't be able to send anything. So we're going to just hit save and close. Then this is the screen you get back to. That's all I'm going to show you for today because this is the only master certificate for liability you will need for the policy term unless one of the aforementioned items is accurate. We will show you how to create and add a certificate holder in the next video. Thank you so much.